Hello, hello. How are you doing? Rena Maktoum here. I'm Hands Woman on the Outside. Today I have the best tip ever. So, after 30 years of mindset, guess what? I finally figured out what to do to make my mindset even better. I have manifested everything from a successful business to healthy kids to trips around the world to fun family vacations, everything. However, recently 2025 has been rough. How many here? 2025 has been rough. This year has just been crazy, and especially in my personal life. So what I was trying to think of was, what could I do to really change my personal life, especially when things are going wrong, especially when you have family conflict, you're terminating a 35-year long relationship. How do you still function? Now, luckily, because of my training, my business did not suffer. My clients have been so supportive and wonderful. However, personally, I thought it's time to grow. So all I was rehearsing were what if scenarios. What if this went wrong? What if that went wrong? How, what would I do if this happened? I was dealing with attorneys. I was dealing with family issues. I was just always planning for the next disaster. And there were so many disasters and, buying people out of properties and all sorts of things that just stressful normally, but even more stressful running a business, even more stressful when you're trying to go through with not the best family situation. So I really needed to change something. And what I realized was I knew a ton about mindset and I knew a ton about running a business, but I was not exactly practicing what I preached. The highest form of energy for us to manifest is gratitude. So we want to manifest whatever we want. So what do you want? Put it in the comments below. Put it into your comments. Write it down. There's a difference when you write something, the way it goes in your brain, than if you just read or think about it. So write it down. And I came up with this thing about, you know what? I am spending day by day rehearsing, literally. What if things go wrong? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if? What if? I spent day by day rehearsing everything that has gone right in my life. So instead of looking at your life and looking at all the disappointments and the things that could have been, and gosh, I wish I'd known this sooner or known this better. What if you just looked at your life, every little moment, and thought about what everything that went right? Okay. So the first one that came to me was when I was 12 years old or so, maybe 11. It was my first trip to Rome, Italy. And this was back when you had to walk on the tarmac this long old way and climb the stairs up to the plane. And of course, the bags had no rollers. So I'm carrying all my stuff, doing that. And there's this big old long line around the plane to walk up the plane into these stairs. And I thought, why not buck the line and run under the wing? And of course, there were army guys that were preventing passengers from going under the wing. But guess who ran under the airplane wing? Me. And the guy was yelling at me, and my grandma was going crazy. And y'all, do you realize if that engine was even a little bit on, this 12-year-old girl that barely weighed 100 pounds would have been just like a bird? And I thought, wow, that was a save. What a huge save. So when I think about that, I feel good. I feel lucky. I feel like I can do anything. So instead of thinking about all the things that are going wrong today, I think about that memory and I feel better. The second one that came to me, and I have this plaque on my wall that I see just about every day. I mean, I look at it every day. I don't know if I see it actually. Was I got a scholarship when I went to school for Menden Krishner. Now, I have never met Menden Krishner. He must have died before I went to school. But his family set up a memorial scholarship. And this memorial scholarship, guess who was the recipient? And that made my tuition in state from out of state. So not only did I get the scholarship, but I also got in state tuition, which is why I was able to pay my own way through college without having to ask my parents for help, without having to rely on anybody. Between me, my work study, and my scholarships, I was able to pay for my whole college. And now that my kids are in college, I can tell them proudly and honestly and look them straight in the eye and say, I paid for my own college. But I didn't realize, this person that passed, Menden Krishner, um, and his family are the reason behind why I could do that. So many times we see the success and we see all the great things, but we don't realize there's little things of luck or caring people or people that I'll never be able to thank, because I've Googled this guy a million times trying to figure out who he was and his family and how he was connected to, the university. Haven't looked out, but God, I am so grateful that when this child passed, these parents created a memorial scholarship, and that got me a college degree. Another one, college one that I remembered, I was driving back to school, and this is, the first week of school right after summer. My car was packed. I had a hatchback, and it was packed to where I had this much room to see out the rearview mirror, but everything else was packed. The front seat, the back seat. There was just room for me to drive and look out the mirror, nothing else. Well, lo and behold, I'm on the highway and I get a flat tire. Now, I had a spare, but the spare was at the bottom of all the stuff that was in the car, and there was so much stuff in this car. Next thing you know, 4 guys in a pickup, drunk. You guys, 9 in the morning, and they are drunk. Show up, pull up behind me. And they say, "Hi, little lady, what you up to?" And I'm stranded, you guys, and this is before cell phones or anything else. They were drinking, and guess what happened? They unloaded the car, took out the spare, put my other tire back, and reloaded the car for me. Changed my tire. Yeah. Imagine how that could have gone. Stuck on a highway, 4 drunk guys. Could have gone so many ways for a college kid, and to be saved like that. So grateful. So I have a list, and I decided I wanted 60 because there are 30 lines on the page. So I was like, I'm going to go 30 down and 30. So across, I'm at about 46. But every single moment in my life that things went right, that I manifested great things that, should have been made for TV movies or horror stories, and they weren't. So, so grateful that people showed up and did little things. And then there were also other points in my life, lows, okay, lows that I was grateful for. And why was I grateful? Because that low was the turning point that I needed, that pivot to smack me upside the head and say, go a different direction. So sometimes you look back at those moments 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later and say, oh my God, that was the moment that really changed. One of the lows was I was at a breakfast, and my guest, okay, I had 2 guests coming. One good friend of mine, good friend from work, promised me she would be there. This before cell phones. I must have called her 8 times. She never picked up. Never picked up, never showed. I had told her I'd already paid for breakfast at a hotel. It was expensive. It was a, entrepreneur breakfast, and she was my guest. And I told her that Friday at work. Saturday, she did not show up, and my other guest did not either. But because I had paid for them, and they had not given me a no. They had said they were coming. They just didn't show. I thought maybe they'd be late, but before cell phones, you don't know what's going on. So I spent the whole breakfast, 2 hours, watching the door, thinking, is it her? Is it her? No, got stood up. So bummed. But that breakfast changed my life, because at that breakfast, a girl told a story about how she worked at a fast food restaurant called Roy Rogers and had gotten a 50-cent an hour raise. And that was what was exciting in her life. And I thought, engineer back then, master's degree, 10 years of radio design experience. And I was like, oh my God, she's excited about 50 cents an hour. That's so sad. I, being the math nerd that I am, quickly calculated my last raise per hour. Now, we always had percentage of annual salary, but I never broke it down. My last raise 4 months earlier was 72 cents an hour. And I remember the next thought that went across my head saying, you know what? Flipping burgers pays pretty well. And then I thought, no, that's not it. It was the first time I questioned my engineering career, and I had this little side hustle as an entrepreneur, but wasn't going to tell anybody. You know how it is. It's embarrassing when you have a degree and all these accolades to go to this entrepreneur route. But I decided that day that I was going to treat my business with respect, and within 6 weeks of that moment, I'd earned the use of my first company car. And again, looking back, I didn't know it was a pivotal moment. I didn't know it was a story I'd be telling 27 years later, right? But that was a big moment. And thank God those people stood me up, because otherwise, if they had been honest and said they weren't coming, I wouldn't have gone and I wouldn't have had that pivotal moment. So think about everything that went right in your life. And instead of rehearsing all the things that are going wrong and the politics and all, the crazy stuff that we're just bombarded with, this information that is pure garbage, um, trained to keep us in lack and attack. So stimulate the subconscious mind to go into fear mode. Instead of focusing on that, focus on everything that went right and tell me the results you get below. Thanks so much for watching.